HR's dirty secrets about complaints. That phrase alone should make you uncomfortable, because what I'm about to tell you might completely change how you handle problems at work. If you've ever walked into an HR office thinking you were about to get help, thinking someone was finally going to listen, thinking the system was designed to protect you, this video is going to be a hard wake-up call. And if you're currently sitting on a workplace complaint right now, do not file anything until you've watched this entire video. Let's start with the most important thing you need to understand about human resources. And I cannot stress this enough. HR does not work for you. I know that sounds harsh. I know the department is literally called Human Resources, and it feels like it should be about humans. But here's the reality. HR works for the company. Full stop. Every person in that HR office was hired by the company, gets paid by the company, and their job performance is evaluated based on how well they protect the company's interests. That does not mean they're evil people. Most HR professionals are genuinely decent individuals who got into this field because they wanted to help people. But the structure they operate within has a completely different agenda. When you walk in with a complaint, the instinct is to think of it like going to a referee. Neutral, fair, there to enforce the rules. But a better mental model is this. Imagine the other team's coach is also serving as the referee. That's the actual dynamic you're walking into. Now let's talk about what actually happens when you file a complaint, because the process is almost never what people expect. The moment you walk into HR with a grievance, two things happen simultaneously. First, they open a file on your complaint. Second, and this is the part nobody tells you, they open a file on you. From that moment forward, your behavior, your performance, your attitude, everything gets watched more closely. Not because HR people are malicious, but because the company needs to protect itself from liability. If they're going to investigate your complaint, they need to make sure there's no legal exposure from multiple directions, including from you. So congratulations, you just signed up for heightened scrutiny whether you wanted it or not. Here's another secret. Confidentiality in HR is largely a myth. When you file a complaint and you're told it will be handled confidentially, what that actually means in practice is that the information will be shared with everyone who needs to know to conduct the investigation. And who needs to know? Well, typically your boss's boss, the legal department, and whoever your boss reports to. So that confidential complaint you filed about your manager is almost certainly going to find out. Maybe not word for word, maybe not with your name attached right at first, but they will know someone said something, and they will figure out it was you. This isn't speculation. This is how organizational investigations functionally work. You cannot investigate a manager without that manager knowing an investigation is happening. The math is not complicated. Let's talk about the concept of retaliation, because this word gets thrown around constantly, and most people fundamentally misunderstand what protection it actually provides. Retaliation protection sounds powerful. It sounds like a shield. If you report something and then your boss treats you badly afterward, that's illegal, and that's true. But here's the thing about retaliation. It's extraordinarily difficult to prove. Your boss doesn't have to do something obviously retaliatory. They don't have to fire you the day after your complaint. What actually happens is far more subtle. Your projects get a little less interesting. Your schedule becomes slightly less flexible. You stop getting included in certain conversations. Your performance review comes back with criticisms that never appeared before. Individually, each of these things is completely deniable. They're just doing their job, managing performance, making business decisions. Collectively, they're making your work life miserable, and proving that this pattern exists because of your complaint and not for legitimate business reasons is nearly impossible without years of documentation and expensive legal battles. Now I want to talk about a specific dynamic that plays out constantly in workplace complaints, and it's something I call the organizational loyalty filter. When HR receives a complaint about someone, especially a manager or a senior employee, the first question that runs through the system isn't whether the complaint is valid. The first question is, what is the cost-benefit analysis of acting on this complaint? versus not acting on it. If the person you're complaining about is highly valued, has strong relationships with leadership, generates significant revenue, or is difficult to replace, the bar for action becomes significantly higher. Meanwhile, if you're newer, if you're more replaceable, if you haven't built strong relationships outside your immediate team, the calculus often favors finding a way to minimize, deflect, or quietly resolve the situation without taking real action. This isn't fair. It's organizational reality. This brings me to something critical. If you're dealing with a genuinely serious situation, a situation involving discrimination, harassment, or illegal activity, the calculus changes. These situations carry real legal liability for the company. When there's potential legal exposure, HR's risk management function actually starts working in your favor because now the cost of not acting becomes higher than the cost of acting. This is why, if you are in one of these situations, documentation becomes your most powerful tool, not just for HR, but potentially for legal avenues outside the company entirely. Federal agencies, state labor boards, employment attorneys. These exist precisely because internal HR processes are not designed as your primary protection. Let me walk you through what smart documentation actually looks like, because this is where most people either don't do it at all or they do it wrong. Wrong documentation looks like an emotional journal entry. Today my boss humiliated me again. I felt terrible. This kind of thing happens all the time. Smart documentation looks completely different. It's factual, it's specific, it includes dates and times and witnesses, and it describes behavior in observable terms without editorializing about how it made you feel. January 14th, 3:15 p.m., Conference Room B manager stated in front of 6 colleagues that my quarterly report was sloppy and unprofessional. This contradicts written feedback from January 2nd, in which the same manager described the report as thorough and well-structured. That feedback is saved in my email folder. See, you have the specifics, you have the contradiction, you have the evidence location, you have the witnesses. That's documentation that actually means something. Here's another thing. HR doesn't advertise. Your complaint is much stronger when it shows a pattern rather than a single incident. A single incident gives HR enormous room to explain away, misinterpret, or downplay what happened. A pattern of documented incidents with dates, specifics, and a clear through line is much harder to dismiss. This is why starting your documentation process early, before things escalate to a breaking point, is so important. Most people start documenting after they've already decided to file a complaint. The smarter move is to document consistently from the moment you notice something feels wrong. Now let's talk about timing, because when you decide to escalate a complaint matters just as much as how you do it. Filing a complaint right after a performance review that went poorly will immediately raise questions about your motivations. Filing a complaint the week before a major project deadline will create a narrative that you're trying to derail work. Filing a complaint without any prior attempts to address the issue directly gives HR an easy out. They can simply say the proper process wasn't followed. If the situation allows for it safely, attempting to address concerns directly first, creating a documented record of that attempt, and then escalating if it fails, creates a much stronger foundation for any formal complaint. There's also the question of what outcome you actually want, because this is something most people haven't fully thought through before they walk into that HR office. Do you want the behavior to stop? Do you want the person disciplined? Do you want a transfer? Do you want to create a paper trail in case things escalate further? Do you want to set the stage for a legal claim down the road? Each of these goals requires a different approach. Going to HR without clarity on what you actually want means HR gets to define the outcome, and their definition of resolution and yours are very often not the same thing. HR considers a complaint resolved when the company's liability is minimized. You might consider it resolved when the problematic behavior actually stops and you feel safe at work again. These two definitions can overlap, but they don't always. Understanding this gap is crucial for setting realistic expectations before you ever walk through that door. Let me be direct about something. Everything I've described can make this topic feel completely hopeless, like the system is so stacked against individuals that there's no point in ever saying anything. That's not the conclusion I want you to take away. The conclusion is that going to HR requires strategy, not just emotion. It requires preparation, not just frustration. It requires understanding what you're walking into and what tools you have available, building relationships outside your immediate reporting chain before you ever need them, documenting early and consistently, knowing whether your situation has actual policy or legal violations versus interpersonal difficulty, understanding what outcome you want, considering whether external channels might serve you better than internal ones. These things don't guarantee a perfect outcome, but they dramatically improve your position compared to walking in unprepared, emotionally raw, with no documentation, no clear ask, and no understanding of who HR actually serves. One final thing, if you do decide to go to HR, bring documentation, bring a specific and concrete ask, stay calm and factual, and know that whatever happens in that room, the real work of protecting yourself was done long before you walked in. The people who come out of these situations with their careers and their dignity intact are the ones who understood the game before they sat down to play it. They didn't go in naive, they went in prepared, and that preparation is the only thing that makes the difference. If you're navigating a difficult workplace situation right now, you don't have to figure this out alone. Subscribe, because we cover this stuff in depth, and if you want to share your own experience in the comments, I read them. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear.